Everton are officially debt-free now that their takeover has been completed. Sir Jim Ratliffe has put even more money into Manchester United. And Jamie Vardy is getting his own Netflix documentary in 2025. All of that and much more in today's Football Fix. If you enjoy the video, subscribe for more. Today we start with the news Roberto Firmino could sign for Fenerbahce. Moving out to the Saudi League previously, looked like it could potentially be the end of his career by just playing out the last of his days getting massive money over there, but Jose Mourinho reportedly wants to sign the Brazilian and bring him back to Europe. This could happen as soon as January, so a lot of people have been wanting to see Firmino back because they felt he left a little bit too early. This could be his way back in. Charlotte want to sign Miguel Almiron in January. This has been a transfer rumour that has been happening for a season or two now, that Miguel Almiron will be leaving Newcastle. They've never really brought in a replacement. They've utilised Jacob Murphy instead. He has been linked to the MLS. He's also been linked to Saudi very heavily in the summer. However, Charlotte are now trying to make things work. This transfer would cost about 8.5 mil if he were to leave in January. However, multiple Premier League clubs, Crystal Palace, Wolves and Leicester, have also been linked on a loan signing for Almiron. And speaking of Leicester, Jamie Vardy is set to have his own documentary coming to Netflix in autumn of 2025. This documentary would be detailing his rise all the way from non-league all the way up to becoming a Premier League great of the game. This is going to be a fantastic watch. It is not fully understood yet exactly what the details of the documentary are going to be, but you can imagine that it will feature lots of clips and interviews from throughout Vardy's career, but also potentially focusing on what could be his final year at Leicester in the current Premier League season. But in the article that launched all of this from John Percy of The Telegraph, he also spoke about some other things that Vardy does, like always being the first to turn up at training at 8:30 in the morning, spending more time there than he needs to. He has his own cryotherapy chamber at his house in Lincolnshire. And also, the best detail is that he teaches himself insults in the language of the centre-backs that he's going to face in order to put them off throughout a game. You have to love it. Chelsea are continuing their interest in signing Jonathan David. This would be happening in the summer transfer window this year. A target for many clubs right now, it seems, whether they are going to try and pay a fee for him in January or wait until the Canadian forward becomes a free agent in the summer. He is attracting interest from multiple European clubs. It is actually really surprising that he hasn't made a move prior to this, because his numbers in Ligue 1 have always been fantastic and he could always be a good option for someone, and he wouldn't cost that much money. You'd probably be looking at the kind of fees that you saw Nicholas Jackson sign for Chelsea for, not the likes of 80 mil for Osimhen or Gyökeres or someone like that. So if Chelsea do sign him, it'd be a really intriguing one to see how him and Jackson would end up rotating. More on the news that Sir Jim Ratliffe has injected a further £79 million into Manchester United. Some people have seen this headline and think that it's a bit of a shock. However, this was already pre-agreed. When the ownership takeover was happening between himself and Ineos, this was always the plan, that after a certain period of time, more money would be put into the club to raise the stake of ownership. This is not personally his, as whilst his stake does grow larger, it is slightly dispersed in terms of the share amounts and stuff like that to all of the Ineos group. So what it does mean is that it takes more ownership away from the Glazers, but it is throughout the entirety of Ineos. This is a good thing, I guess, for Manchester United, although some of their fans are not quite taking to Sir Jim in the way that we thought that they initially would, where it was basically the Glazers or anybody else. Maybe that wasn't quite the dream scenario. Kevin De Bruyne is looking more and more likely to leave Manchester City in the summer. There have not really been any progressing in the contract talks that are supposedly going ahead with him and Man City. Is this partially due to the fact that they have all these charges coming? Would they potentially get relegated? No one really knows. However, it is looking more likely that he is off. There were previously links to some European clubs. Turkey were involved. Saudi, of course, want a superstar name like Kevin De Bruyne. That is their whole model. They get the big names even if they are past their best. But the latest links are to the MLS. And this one would be for him to sign for San Diego. So not any of the ones that you've heard a lot of players going to before, like, I don't know, LA Galaxy, Inter Miami, of course, LAFC that we saw people like Bale go to. No, San Diego for Kevin De Bruyne. Would be really interesting to see him potentially go over there to the USA, but I kind of hope for his career that isn't how it ends. Speaking of another good player that is potentially past their best, moving to one of these slightly lesser leagues, Galatasaray are pushing to try and sign Paulo Dybala from Roma. Argentinian player, phenomenal. Incredible player throughout the years, had many good years in the Serie A at multiple clubs, and is now currently still at Roma. There were many links in the summer that he was going to end up leaving and potentially go to Saudi, but he ended up staying, and that is great news for Roma. However, Galatasaray are now trying to get him, and maybe even as early as January, just like the Roberto Firmino to Fenerbahce. These Turkish clubs seem to want to do business in January to try and bulk up their squads for the remainder of the season. He's had many transfer links in the previous years, but now it seems that Turkey is the most likely destination that Paulo Dybala is going to end up at. And the final story is a big one today, because the Free King Group have officially taken over Everton Football Club. This is something that has been going on for a very long time. Everton have tried to have like 5 different new owners in the last few years. Some of them have been dodgy dealings where it's fallen through, or the Premier League haven't approved it because they don't really have the right documentation, and things don't seem like they are actually financially supported from the ownership side of things. So I feel like this is a massive sigh of relief for every Everton fan, because it's not a new owner linked with the club like, oh, these are going to be the ones to come in and save the day. No, this is it. It is done. Everton have put out their statement. The Premier League have put out their statement saying that they fully approve the takeover, which also is massive for Everton for one big reason. We all know that they're moving into this incredible new stadium by the docks and everything. It looks phenomenal, and they need to stay in the Premier League in order to make the most of that stadium. And this is a massive thing, because with this takeover, Everton are officially completely debt-free. A massive moment for the club, which hopefully, for their sake, will see them stay in the Premier League and progress and become the club that we know they have been, but not for a long time. European days could potentially be in the next few years for Everton if they can build back up to the team that we saw under David Moyes, and then even further back in their history as well. So some great news for Everton today is going to end off our video. See you in the next one. Bye bye.